the big thing with the ideas on here is don't just copy these, use them as a framework to think about how is this similar to something my ideal prospect is dealing with? And how could I use this as kind of a launch pad to think about symptoms? So maybe your kids want to play another round of tag, but you have no energy. Maybe, well, that shouldn't say cheese. That should say when the cheese its. But it could also be cheese. Cheese is one of those things. If there's one thing that I talked to anybody on the phone when I was nutrition coaching, I was like, so what's the one food that like I was always expecting, like, I want ice cream or I want pizza or like all this stuff. And it was so funny because the one thing be like cheese, like nothing else. Like, no, cheese. It's like, okay, well, I'm not sure why I'm doing nutrition coaching. I should be in the cheese business. But so something as simple as like when the Cheez-Its are calling your name, talking about like late night mindless eating or snacking. When the scale's not budging. Here, we're not even talking about weight loss. We're just talking about a symptom of it. The frustration that goes along with doing everything that you can and not seeing the scale budge and just being like, fuck, are you kidding me? Like I was perfect this week. I hit my macros. I went for my 10-minute walks. I went to the gym and it's still not budging, but we're not talking about any of those things. We're just talking about how it shows up in their daily life. So for people who are heavier on the training side, ever feel like your first 3 sets are just throwaways that don't count? Feel like you're just like kind of going through the motions. It's a waste of time. Like, yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people out there who are like that. Tired of rolling out of bed in rigor mortis, needing 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol just to walk downstairs. For somebody who has joint pain, the problem this person has is joint pain. How it shows up in their everyday life is the pain that they feel rolling out of bed, being super stiff, achy joints that pop. Think about it in those regards, like in the same way that, first 3 sets always feel like a throwaway that don't count. That could be something for like a mobility program, or that could be something for somebody whose unique mechanism involves not just getting in and doing the exercise, but how you activate and recruit those muscles to fire stronger before you come in the gym and exercise. When the Cheez-Its are calling your name, that is somebody who's going to be, usually struggling with late night mindless eating, or somebody who struggles with not snacking at night and blowing their overall diet. Your kids want to play another round of tag, but you have no energy. That could be a ton of different things. It could be, people who are struggling with sleep. It could be people who are just so worn out because their diet is poor, because they're eating crap food, all these different kinds of things. Or this is one that my girlfriend would probably tell everybody that I relate to. You need 3 cups of coffee before your very first conversation of the day. These are all things that you can think of. Think of how does this play out in this person's life in a way that isn't pleasant? What does it show up as? And how can I talk directly to that and use that to pull the person in? Because as soon as they hear that symptom, they're like, oh shit, this person understands me. They understand they're not just talking about fat loss. They're not just talking about exercise. They're not just talking about this. They're talking about the stuff that's happening to me personally on a day-to-day basis. So does that make sense for everybody? Is that like resonating in terms of why talking about symptoms is way more powerful than talking about a big problem? Does everybody get that? Actually have a good amount of curiosity and things like that in them. So you could potentially use, like, what you want to do in a headline is you want to make it very symptomatic and drive a lot of curiosity. So you want to drive curiosity around what is happening or what the resolution is to it, right? So those are the kinds of things that we want. We want a heavy dose of symptomatic messaging and curiosity. And any of those, I think, actually probably could do decently well as a headline. They might be a little bit long for a headline, and things along those lines. So, all right, let me look through here. About wisdom without giving. Yep, we'll cover that. All right. Face masks fix it all. Her husband might be turned off now. Now he has to eat almond face mask. Oh, you guys are funny, man. This is my kitchen. My mom was just like, "Yep, that's me." Capture rest replay. Cool. Alrighty. Yep, we will absolutely talk about transitions. So let me go ahead and X out of this. So let's cover this and we'll go back to transitions in just a second. Because some of these things, like your transitions, at the end of the day, they are really just you rehooking them. Now, like some transitions are something that's actually, the simpler the better with transitions. And you don't, I'll just cover it right now because we can just jam on it. With transitions, the big thing with that is you don't want them to take away from the flow of the content. That's one big thing that can happen is whenever I'm writing content, I'm like, is the idea present all the way through? And anything that we write that takes away from the idea or is like a deviation, we always want to try to get away from that. So transitions can be, you know, it's really dependent on what you're talking about. So some of the things that I'll like to say is I'll be like, hear me out real quick and you'll understand exactly what I mean. Some of the other ones are something along the lines of sit tight for a quick second and I'll share what I mean. Transitions, you really just want to think of as something short to get them to the next line. One of my favorite ones is, I don't like telling people something like in all honesty or something along those lines because it makes it feel like you haven't been honest with them before. One of the biggest things that I like is, but in reality, because then it's like, hey, I'm kind of being a little bit real with you and you think it's this, but it's actually this. Emily, could you drop some kind of specific questions about transitions? Because they're kind of very, very big idea. So if there are specific questions that you have, it would help me to direct it more towards exactly what you're talking about. Because the whole idea with a transition is you want it to be short, and the real purpose is to just get them to read the next thing. That's really it. It doesn't have to be, the shorter the better, usually in my opinion, because too long of a transition pulls away from attention. It makes them not want to read. They're like, why are you not getting to the point yet? Right? Let me see if there are, questions in there. Symptom to metaphor and metaphor to wisdom. Okay. Tying things together. Yeah, that makes sense. So usually when it comes from going from a symptom, what I like to do in the structure that I like to use is I like to use a hook. At the very first thing that I always write is something along the lines of just restating the symptom that I gave them in the headline. So let's just use one of these as an example. So let's say when the Cheez-Its are calling your name. It's an easy one to do. So when the Cheez-Its are calling your name, then for the hook, you could go in and say, we all know that feeling at 11:30 at night when you're curled up on the couch watching Netflix and your hand hits the bottom of the bowl, ellipsis. And then from there, I like to, and this is just something that's personal to me and kind of what I like to do, I like to introduce myself or the person that I am writing for. Like, hey, Alex here. If you've ever dealt with, if you've ever found yourself staring at the pantry late at night or with the fridge open, mindlessly looking inside, then I have something I want to share with you that could help you put an end to that. Then ellipsis, I like ellipses a lot because they do a great job of letting the person know there's something coming next. And it allows you to break up ideas so you can even drag their attention from one sentence to the next. Then from there, essentially after letting them know what I was going to share, I would literally go into the metaphor. The metaphor is already a little bit in that one, a little bit more. Or from there, have it be something along the lines of, if you've ever found yourself staring in the fridge late at night or the pantry open, feeling like you had just driven home from work and had no idea how you got there, then I have something I'd like to share with you to make sure that this never happens again. ... Then from there, it could be, this is something that I talk with my clients about all the time and a struggle that they deal with. ... Then from there, you'd go, then you would just go into telling a specific story about that client. So with that client, you'd be like, I worked with a client named Denise, and no matter what Denise did, she would always end up snacking and eating late at night. So we implemented a specific strategy with Denise where we actually connected the habits of what she was doing with what she wanted to do. Denise loved to put her daughter to bed every single night. And so instead of working against that, we actually had Denise brush her teeth with her daughter before putting her to bed. Her mouth felt minty, her mouth felt fresh. And as a result of that, Denise actually didn't want to brush her teeth anymore, or didn't want to snack late at night anymore, because it actually allowed her to. And then kind of going into a little bit of the wisdom. I don't have Denise's wisdom right now from the Cheez-Its, but then from there you'd say, something along the lines of, after the story, it could be, and if you've ever dealt with anything like this, then go into the wisdom. So if you've ever dealt with anything like this before, it kind of rehooks them, because by that point, if they've read that far down, there's probably something that resonated with them, and then you can go right into that, if that makes sense. All righty, let me dive into the story. By the way, Emily, if that wasn't clear, I take zero offense to anything. I have ADD, my brain jumps all over the place. So if that's the case, just go ahead and drop something in the chat. And when I finish up the whole story, metaphor, and analogy, I can come back and take a look at what your questions are. So the story, metaphor, and analogy is really what we use to tie everything together. It is how we tie the symptom that they've been having, and it's how we tie the symptom that they've been dealing with to the wisdom that we want to give them. It's a way for us to kind of shed light on the problem or the solution in a fun way, using something that they already know about and understand. So we're taking an idea that they might not know a ton about, and we're taking a way to make it very easy for them to understand by being like, this is just like this. That's kind of the part of the story, metaphor, and analogy that is great. So we're taking something they don't understand, or something that they might not have as much clarity on, and we're giving them an example that it's just like, to help make them very, very clear on what it is that we want them to understand. So one of the